So today, we're going to deconstruct a hidden psychological mechanism that costs you influence pretty much every single day. We are talking about over-explaining. It's that habit that pretends it's all about being clear, but really, it's just a constant, subtle leak of your own personal authority. In those big, high-stakes conversations, it's basically the audible version of a nervous twitch. We're going to expose exactly how this works, why you do it, and then give you a really precise protocol to reclaim the power you've been talking yourself out of.
Just think about that for a second. We live in a world that is just saturated with noise, right? We're all conditioned to believe that you create value by adding more. More words, more data, more reasons. But what if the most powerful tool of influence is actually the exact opposite? A deliberate, structured silence. And look, this isn't some clever saying for a coffee mug. This is a strategic principle. It's based on the deep, unspoken rules of social dynamics. Silence communicates a kind of conviction that's so deep, it doesn't need to defend itself.
Okay, so if silence is so powerful, why do we have this almost compulsive urge to fill it? Why do we feel that pit in our stomach in a quiet moment and just rush to justify our decisions, our boundaries, our very existence? We tell ourselves, oh, I'm just being clear, or I'm being transparent or collaborative. But what you're actually doing is subconsciously signaling that your position is weak, that it's up for debate. You're literally handing over the keys to your own authority and inviting, begging almost, for other people to question it. This is the central paradox we are going to solve right now.
Okay, let's dive in. Here's our game plan for this deep analysis. We're going to kick things off with that core contradiction, the persuasion paradox. Then, we'll get into the hard science of signaling theory and see how your words are basically betraying your internal state. After that, we'll deconstruct this self-sabotaging engine called the Justification Trap and explore the deep psychology of fawning that keeps it running. Then, we're going to shift from diagnosis to tactics with the economic speech protocol. And finally, we'll master the single most powerful tool you have, the complete sentence.
Let's start with this concept I like to call the value leak. You see, most of us operate under this totally false assumption that to be persuasive, we have to provide more information, more reasons, more logic. We think we can just argue someone into agreeing with us. But in the world of high-stakes communication, the opposite is almost always true. Over-explaining doesn't build your case, it subtly and systematically undermines it, one unnecessary word at a time.
Let's really look at the subtext here. When you state a decision, something simple like, I can't attend that meeting, and you immediately follow it up with a whole list of reasons, you're subconsciously signaling that your first statement wasn't strong enough to stand on its own. You're implying that your no needs to be validated by the listener, that it's totally open for debate if they can just poke a hole in your reasoning. You think you're clarifying, but what you're really doing is inviting a cross-examination. You've just turned a simple statement into a full-blown negotiation.
And this brings us to a formal definition. The value leak is this subconscious habit of just flooding a conversation with words you don't need. Imagine your authority is like a reservoir of water held behind a massive dam. Well, every extra word, every unneeded justification is a tiny crack in that dam. It turns a firm boundary into something porous and weak, and a clear decision into an open invitation to negotiate. It's a self-inflicted wound to your own influence. So let's look at the science behind why this even happens.
Now let's build on that. This isn't just about feelings or vague perceptions. This is grounded in the hard science of evolutionary biology and behavior. Your communication habits are constantly broadcasting this high-resolution data about what's going on inside you, whether you want them to or not. Your words are a readout of your internal state.
So, signaling theory basically tells us that we are all walking, talking transmitters. Every single thing we do, every communication, is a signal about our genetic fitness, our emotional stability, our social standing. Confident people signal confidence through an economy of language. Anxious people signal their anxiety through a flood of words. High-status people show their position by not needing to justify it at all. Your words are a direct printout of your internal baseline, and over-explaining is like a big flashing red light that signals, hey, I lack internal security and perceive my own status as low. And this just brilliantly illustrates the two paths you can take in any given interaction. On the left, you've got the permission-seeking reflex. This is the default mode for anyone who over-explains. Each justification you give is what strategists call an attack surface. It's a potential weak point for the other person to target, to question, and to dismantle. You've just made them the judge of your reasoning. But on the right, you have cognitive sovereignty. This is when your statement is the final word. It's a single, solid, clean boundary. You're not the one asking for permission. You are the author of your reality. And that shift from the left side to the right side, that's the entire game of influence.
So how does this trap actually work in real time? Because it's not just a bad habit.
It's a powerful, self-reinforcing psychological loop. It's a feedback cycle where your anxiety creates words, and then those words cause you to lose status, which in turn creates even more anxiety. It's a perfect, closed system of self-sabotage. So let's pop the hood and break this machine down.
It all starts right here, with what I call the spontaneous spike. You need to set a boundary, or say no, or maybe state an unpopular opinion. And in that split second, your nervous system registers a potential social threat, the threat of being disapproved of or disconnected from the group. For so many of us, this triggers what's called attachment anxiety, that primal fear of being cast out. And the silence that follows your statement, it feels unbearable, like a void of negative judgment that you have to fill with noise immediately.
So, to kill that spike of anxiety, your brain's defense mechanism kicks in with phase 2, the data dump. This is that physical sensation of word vomit we can all recognize. You just start flooding the zone with reasons, with context, with backstory, with justifications, desperately trying to manage the other person's perception of you and neutralize that threat you're feeling. You're not communicating strategically at all, you're just self-soothing with syllables. It's a verbal smokescreen to hide your own discomfort.
Okay, now look at the full loop. This is where the trap snaps shut. The spike leads to the data dump. And this is so crucial. In phase 3, the listener's brain uses these mental shortcuts, what psychologists call status heuristics. These are rapid, subconscious judgments about where you stand socially. They see your agitated, reactive, wordy state, and their brain just categorizes you as low status and uncertain. This is the exact moment control shifts, and that perceived weakness leads directly to phase 4, the negotiation. Because you've provided so much data, so many of those attack surfaces, they now have all the ammunition they need to pick apart your reasoning. They're not even trying to be mean. You've simply invited them into a debate you never meant to have. And their questions just create more anxiety in you, which feeds you right back into phase 1.
So why are we wired this way? Why does this loop have such a powerful, almost hypnotic hold on us? Well, the root cause is often a really deep-seated survival instinct that our conscious mind just misinterprets as being nice or being thorough. It's basically a piece of outdated software running on the hardware of your modern brain.
You've probably heard of the fight, flight, or freeze responses to a threat. But there's a fourth one, and it's called fawn. This is the instinct to try and appease a potential threat to avoid conflict at all costs. Overexplaining is a classic fawning behavior. We subconsciously believe that if we can just make the other person understand our reasons completely, then they won't be mad, they won't reject us, they won't abandon us. We mistake our justification for a gesture of respect when it's really an act of submission. And there are several cognitive biases that just act as fuel for this fire. First, there's the spotlight effect. It convinces us our internal anxiety is like a giant flashing neon sign for everyone to see, so we create this verbal smokescreen to hide it. This gets amplified by loss aversion, that deep-seated terror of losing the other person's approval that feels way, way bigger than it actually is. And finally, we totally miscalculate cognitive load. We think piling on more reasons will make our case stronger, but in reality, it just exhausts the listener's brain, makes us seem disorganized, and causes them to just default to being skeptical.
All right, we've diagnosed the problem, we've deconstructed the mechanism, and we've uncovered the psychology. We have mapped the prison. Now, here are the keys to get out. This isn't about becoming cold or uncommunicative. It's about becoming precise, intentional, and surgically effective with your language. It's about moving from being a petitioner to being the author of your life.
Here is the protocol. 3 simple but incredibly powerful actions. First, when you feel that urge to over-explain, you perform a cognitive reappraisal. You mentally label that physical feeling. This is an approval-seeking spike. Just naming it keeps your rational brain online. Second, you execute the hard stop. You state your decision or your boundary in one single complete sentence, and then you stop talking, period. And third, and trust me, this is the hardest part, you have to learn to get comfortable with the silence that follows. That silence is not a vacuum of disapproval. It's the space where your decision is solidifying in reality. It's an active assertion of your position.
Just look at this slide. I can't make it on Friday. That's it. It's a closed loop. There's no because you see I have this other thing and my cousin is in town and I've been really tired and work has been crazy. All of that stuff, those are all attack surfaces. This statement is a clean, solid, unassailable boundary. It doesn't invite debate, it doesn't apologize for existing, it just is. This is the sound of cognitive sovereignty.
Now, this is a really crucial point, especially for anyone in a leadership position. This is not about being withholding or secretive. There is a massive strategic difference between giving excuses and providing a rationale. Excuses are driven by your own anxiety. They're designed to protect you. A rationale is driven by a desire to empower other people. It provides the why to give your team context and get everyone aligned. Excuses leak status, rationale builds what's called referent power. That's the power that comes from being trusted and respected. The motive here is everything.
This brings us to the final and most important takeaway of this entire analysis. If you remember absolutely nothing else from our time together, please remember this. The mastery of influence is not the mastery of complex arguments, it is the mastery of the complete sentence.
Let this one really sink in. You offer an explanation when someone is genuinely confused and they need clarity to move forward. You offer a justification when you subconsciously feel like you've done something wrong and you need to defend yourself. When you state a simple boundary like, "I can't make it," the other person is very rarely confused. That urge you feel to justify it is coming from a misplaced, conditioned sense of guilt. You have to stop pleading guilty to the crime of simply having your own needs and your own boundaries.
So, what's the ultimate key? What brings this whole system down? It's not a secret script or some fancy technique. It is awareness. That Anxiety-Logorrhea Loop we deconstructed, it runs on autopilot, in the dark. The moment you shine the light of consciousness on it, the moment you feel that anxiety spike, and you can name it as an approval-seeking spike, the entire system begins to just collapse. You interrupt the pattern. And that awareness gives you the single second you need to choose a different path, to choose the hard stop, to choose silence, to choose your own sovereignty.
In the end, true power and influence aren't found in having the most arguments, but in having a conviction that requires none. Your silence speaks to a depth of certainty and an internal alignment that no amount of words could ever replicate. It signals that your decision was made long before this conversation ever even began. The real conversation, the one where you have true influence, actually begins the moment you stop talking.